Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Not a lot of bells and whistles today. As you can see, I'm obviously on the road. Java with Jimmy is on the road this morning. But listen, we want to check in with the mayor. It looks like she's on the road as well. Got a few things to check in about with her. But let's just bring her right this morning. Mayor, good morning. We're both on the road today.
Yeah, good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm good. It was a late night. We had decided the kids were probably old enough. They'd never been to see the fireworks in person before. And so we stayed, watched the show, but I didn't realize that the whole thing goes until like 11:40 p.m. or so.
You have the exact
sorry,
time.
not 10. Wait, we got home around 11:40. So it was a pretty late night. The kids were basically just passed out by the end of it, but they enjoyed it.
Good thing there's no school today. But you're doing, I always check in on you. There's a lot going on. I did hear that the weather was not the best in Boston yesterday. And from, our time with Mayor Menino and sometimes I remember Ed Davis, you remember there was one summer where it rained like all summer and the mayor was like, I ain't mad about it. It unfortunately, it lends to less incidents. Let's just, be honest about that. And so I'll be honest, when I heard that, I kind of exhaled a little bit because it does decrease the potential, of less incidents. But maybe let's start there first. Mayor, what are your thoughts about fireworks?
Even yesterday we were, where were we headed? So yesterday for just the middle chunk of the day in between the morning 4th of July declaration reading from the balcony of the old State House parade and then the Pops concert, we snuck a couple hours and went to a park where Cass is learning to ride a bike. But on the way, we were driving through the neighborhoods, and this was at it must have been 2 p.m. or something, and someone was setting off fireworks in broad daylight, which was just, but the first feeling that you get and the triggering, and it's a lot. I think it has been, in general, especially compared to previous years.
Yeah.
I don't even want to say it because in general has been quieter. Although I have been in touch I'm on a chain with several mayors from other major cities as well, and in many other cities. This has been a topic for all of us because it's a lot to experience and for residents to process during this time, and it's a lot on public safety as we think about what the response is as well. So so far on the fireworks side it has been a little bit quieter, but we shall see. Usually it kind of runs up through the holiday, and then it either keeps going or it really tapers off.
It dies out. And I know nothing, you won't say it, but I'll say that nothing in the past couple of years has been like 2020. 2020 was the year of just woodworks, fireworks. One of the other things in that vein I wanted to ask about, as I said, yesterday didn't seem, any life loss, any shootings is definitely an issue. But toward the end of the evening, there was a lot of activity. And based on how mass shootings are defined, there were 4 people shot last night. And upon the 4th occurrence in a shooting, they, whoever they are, consider that a mass shooting. And so as far as public safety for this summer, where are we with that? I know Dr. Yarblow has been taking a different approach and really interacting with residents. We're in the process of the healing tour. Could you speak a little bit to summer safety?
Yeah, absolutely. And just in terms of last night, the briefing that I received about, again, in these instances, when we see the number of shots fired relative to how serious the injuries were, often that is a case of medical intervention, and how lucky we are that our
Yep.
hospitals are, one, close by, and
Yep.
two, just world class. And so
Mhm.
we think about the shootings number as really, obviously I'm grateful every time, and just so thankful when it is a situation like last night where it ended up being non-life threatening injuries, but you're just this close. I mean, inches away each time. And especially when it is in a crowd or a party or a larger gathering, it's just very, very concerning that we're seeing that kind of behavior in groups where there's often multiple generations present as
Yeah.
well. So
Yes.
we just really, we our hope is that the summer is a summer of healing and fun and activity. We've seen our youth summer jobs numbers higher than ever. We're
Okay.
giving out block party grants so that
I saw that.
community members can, you know, get a grant from the city to buy those hot dogs or pops, and bring your neighbors together. Community center, some of the community centers across the city have lengthened extended hours with programming, and so we just want to give people every opportunity to come together as more events that people are used to seeing every year are finally coming back after a multi-year
Yeah.
hiatus.
Yeah.
We're seeing turnout that's bigger than ever. People are craving the chance to be together, but it's also, there's a lot of dysregulation, mental health
Yeah.
needs that have been unmet, and that can come together in pretty stressful ways.
It is interesting because one of the things about the summer is the belief is, folks have been in all winter. I think with the pandemic, as you mentioned, and social media, that's why sometimes the summer you tend to get more incidents because, hey, I haven't seen you since let's just be honest, you've been talking trash, online. Let me pivot just a little bit because of your time.
Can I just make a note on that front, though?
Yes.
Because there was a really powerful message that Chaplain Clementina Cherry had sent out
Yes.
just
I
over the
seen
last
the
couple of
post.
days
Yeah.
about
Yep.
how, if you look at the number of families that the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute is serving, and they're our main partner when it comes to families who are grieving and have been robbed of a loved one due to usually gun violence
Yeah.
and trauma, that they were calculating the number of incidents, and as a whole there are just as many, if not more, that occur during the colder months. And so really, to get us all into the mindset of, and you've been
Yes.
pushing this for a long time,
Yep.
thinking about this, yes, each season has different challenges and different factors and stressors, but this really has to be a year-round effort of all
Yeah.
hands on deck to eliminate violence in our communities. And we know, as the weather patterns are changing throughout the year, this year
Mhm.
was an incredibly mild winter, and
Yeah.
we did see numbers a little bit higher on the front end of the year as well. So we kind of, all the lines are getting a little bit blurred in terms of what the quote unquote usual patterns are, and
Yeah.
it's really just all hands on deck to person-based, place-based, behavior-based interventions, and making sure that we can connect with those who are already doing that healing on the ground.
Absolutely. One of the things that I am aware of that Dr. Yablo is doing is expanding the violence spectrum. The city has this prevention framework that they've been working with. I don't know if it's fully released yet, but the sort of overall violence prevention framework. One of the spaces that he's moving in is domestic partner violence, and that, to some respect, or another area he's moving into with law enforcement is human trafficking, is ensuring that young women or young men too aren't victims of human trafficking. I know that there are two big issues. We'll start with this one that, when you're coming on, I get inundated with text and inbox. Are you going to ask? Are you going to ask? Are you going to ask? But the 32-year-old woman, and I know this is under investigation, and so you can't, break that, Dr. Cox, Commissioner Cox, and the DA would, get you. But some parents feel that with some of the rigmarole they go through just to, IDs and birth certificates and whatnot, how did this happen that this 32-year-old woman can infiltrate our system. And some of these, there were a couple of young women that were victimized. And so what safety, one, you can respond to it, and then what you're aware of that Superintendent Skipper and them are doing, what buffers, safety nets are in place to ensure that something like this never happens again?
Yeah. So maybe I can walk through a little bit of, I'll try to just share
where you can.
what is able,
Yeah.
what is possible to be shared, and just to give a sense of really how elaborate this situation was. You have someone who worked for DCF, including during the time, at least partially, that they were enrolled in the schools, and in that role as a social worker, was very familiar with the processes when someone is coming from DCF into the district. And this is a little bit of a tension, because we need to verify people's identity and make sure that resources are only going to Boston residents and Boston young people. But at the same time, we need to be the district and the place where, at the end of the day, if students in charter schools, in other situations, they need somewhere to go, they come to BPS. And you don't want to delay someone's right to an education because they can't access paperwork or an ID, especially if they're coming from a certain situation of trauma or where they just don't have that information. And so there is, in fact, a process by which, if you're coming out of DCF, the requirements are different than if you are living at home with your family who has access to all of your documents. And the registration process allows for you to just start in school and submit that paperwork later. There's also some back and forth with folks at DCF, which, if you know how the system works and you're willing to go so far as to simulate that, or just deceive people fraudulently in that way, there's a way to game the system if you really want to. Now, we were all just incredibly alarmed, right? You think of if someone, my kids are a little younger, but you think of a high school child and then realize they're in school with someone almost double their age, or in some cases in the same class as someone double their age, pretending to be a young person, and your mind, it immediately goes to the worst case scenario, right? Exactly. Is it human trafficking? Is it something worse? So far, knock on wood, evidence to that on that front hasn't been identified, even though they've been investigating that very intensely, because that was the first suspicion. But as you say, many young people were in contact with this person. They took resources, playing on the basketball team, taking advantage of social emotional supports, time, energy that other young people should have been receiving. And so it's very bizarre right now, and it's still ongoing. There were also adults that were, other adults that were involved in this situation, who went and accompanied this person to be registered, et cetera, so that need to be looked into and are still under investigation as well.
But the one part out, and I'll move on to something, another topic that I've been reached out about is, I'm sure you and Superintendent Skipper and probably Commissioner Cox have gotten together and huddled up around, and you're not a head roller type of person, but as a parent and as a parent, how can parents feel that their children are going to be safer and something like this? Again, you named everything, the intentionality. You worked for DCF. You had access to records of other people. We're not putting anything as far as the investigation. Presumably, you were doing this. And so as a parent, Mayor, how can parents feel comfortable that ongoing you all will do your best to ensure something like this doesn't happen again?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the very baseline, just some routine, like, okay, you see the paper, you look for the parts that you need to. Oh, can you hear me too?
Yep. Can you start over again? I want to make sure we hear you.
I was saying, when you're in positions where your job is just to kind of process young people so that they can get in their right classes right away, sometimes when you're handed a piece of paper, you just look to the part that has the relevant information. You're not
For you. Yeah.
scanning the whole thing to see if the
Yep.
whole paper is made up, because it looks like a standard form. And so I think there's definitely work that we can do to just make sure there's a little bit more awareness about the whole picture. But I will say that in this case, as soon as there were flags, red
Yep.
flags, someone acted and actually went above and beyond what their own role was,
Okay.
and elevated and then looked into more. And then it was really a matter of days between when someone got suspicious about, it's got a funny feeling about the registration paperwork feeling strange, and the multiple transfers in such quick succession.
Okay.
And then it all unraveled very quickly. So I think, it's terrifying to think about that. And we're going to do everything we can to understand at every checkpoint how we can make sure that people are safe and catch fraud, while at the same time understanding that people are coming from different situations and do need to be enrolled quickly. This was just, I think, in some ways, a really bizarre example of just an extreme situation that went on for several months before it was identified.
Extreme intentional manipulation. I'll just go ahead and say that. You mentioned evidence in this case, and one of the other things that I've been reached out about, to whom I'm going to ask about on Twitter and Facebook, BHA. And again, this is an investigation. And so I'm just saying that it's not capped for the mayor, for those of you that may want to say I'm capping for, but when investigations go on, you can't publicly say a lot of stuff, and you can't, just divulge any, and you may not be aware of everything because it's an investigation. And so with the BHA piece, there's some back and forth about the EMTs, the police, the firemen, what evidence. I'll leave that other one alone about offensive language that was used involving in this case. But where can you assure BHA residents, taxpayers that, BHA and well, it's BHA, it's EMTs, what's going on there, Mayor? Where with you can share?
And I want to highlight something actually that hasn't gotten a lot of discussion in this situation that I think is actually an underlying really important factor here. But okay, so in terms of what happened, each of our first responder agencies has a different role to play when they're called to a crisis, and they all get called at different times. Usually EMS and fire, if it's a situation where someone is unconscious, which is what happened here, and it's not a potential homicide right away, BPD doesn't get called to the scene initially. The acronym that Chief Hooley and others have said to me is ABC, right? Ambulance before cops, I think is what it is.
Okay.
Because you want to administer the medical treatment first before you have everyone rush in and start documenting this, whatever. So the EMTs arrived on the scene first when, in this group of people who are in an apartment, someone was found to be unconscious. They began performing CPR to try to resuscitate them. The fire department usually gets deployed at the same time, just because sometimes they're closer, sometimes they're not, but it's just backup basically because they're also medically trained as paramedics. So they arrived a few minutes later to assist. Once that person was deemed to be not responsive and officially designated as deceased, then BPD was called to begin the death investigation, where they take pictures to document the scene, begin to interview people, and then really investigate what happened. So fire left basically by the time, or they were just leaving as BPD arrived, to give you a sense of the timing. And it was probably, I think it was about a little under 30 minutes between when EMTs first arrived and then when BPD arrived. The fire department called for a 51A from the scene. They were alarmed and worried that there were children on scene when this situation was happening. BPD arrived and they had a different experience, where they felt the adults were all wanting to protect the children. They are trained in how to respond on scene to people experiencing extreme trauma, and to help process what's happening while they begin the investigation. And they documented, in the role that is their responsibility to do, what happened and what they saw. And so I think really what happened here was each of these agencies was trying their best to save lives and to protect everyone. Some individuals may not have been trained in how to respond to certain scenes, right? Whether it is around gender identity and what was reported in some of the documents when you're at a gathering with multiple trans community members.
Yep.
Some there was different reporting about the interaction with the adults in the room and how people react when there's first trauma. And time also passed in that half an hour. But I think it's clear is that everyone has their own lane that they're in.
Yep.
And it is BPD's lane to do the investigating, to do the documenting. Now, there started to be spinning out through rumors of what was happening. And sometimes rumors are based in truth, right? Little kernels of this and that happening.
Yep.
But what we ended up hearing with certain folks elected officials, for example, going on the media and saying there was hoarding, there was this and that, there was stuff all over the place. I saw the pictures of the scene. If it was hoarding, it wouldn't have been able to in 30 minutes to get cleaned up to how it looked in the pictures, right? So, and not to say, I'm not trying to nitpick, right? Because again, everyone was in the moment of crisis, trying to do what they thought was best. But people need to feel like they can call 911 no matter how clean or unclean their house is at that moment, right?
Or what their gender preference or what they appear to be is as well.
The number one guarantee we have to have for people is that they can call, even if they were involved in illegal behavior at that moment. If someone needs medical treatment and help, call 911 and don't be worried about all these other things spinning out into rumor and people knowing all your business. And so that part, the calls to additional people to then generate all of this national and really international media about someone's private life in that moment, whether or not there was illegal behavior, is going to be investigated, and all the right agencies are involved to determine that. But to expose these children's names, their lives forever now, living on the internet because of, in some cases, motivations that were really feeding stereotypes about a certain community, that is harmful, I believe, to us really guaranteeing our residents that they should trust and know that they can contact 911. So I want to just emphasize this is about the discretion that's required when you are in law enforcement, in public safety, responding to emergency scenes. It's not just about following the law and making sure that, you're not sharing things because you might get sued for privacy exemptions or this or that. It's about reinforcing the sense that we're here first and foremost to help in the worst circumstances of people's lives. Mm-hmm. And that help is what people should remember most of all, not the fears about all the other little things that should be irrelevant in a moment where they really just are in crisis.
I appreciate the for lack of better words, candor and transparency, Mayor, because it unfortunately the last couple of times we've been able to have a comprehensive conversation, some of the stuff that is lending to rumors and distraction from the work that we all try to do is caught up in stuff that's going on with people in leadership positions that could make better use of their time. How about we frame it like that? I'll be nice today. I always want to, when we have to go in spaces like this, to end on a good note. And one thing I want to say before we move to the good note is I'm sure somewhere, like you did the prevention framework, that somewhere along the line, Tiffany and them are getting together and they're looking at some protocols to ensure that there's, that's my word, Mayor, interdepartmental, like protocols and communication. So BFD, BPD, and EMS have the proper protocols in place. So when they cross over, thanks for sort of defining sort of the roles. And I will end with this, that it's sad that within our city, there's been so much work pre you, during you, we'll go on after you, with like Quincy and folks, that be this welcome and accepting city. And you have someone who's in a leaderful body that represents this city that doesn't understand in 2023, there's just certain words and understanding that we all, make mistakes and we're learning, and culture, got to give grace for that. But it's just very interesting that in 2023, there were some certain words that were used that brought national attention to our city, knowing that there are people that are working to for equality and equity.
Yeah. And I really believe that everyone in this situation meant well. Everyone, and
To the
just
pure,
as
all things are pure, Mayor. You go ahead. I'm sorry. Yep.
just as when our officers come on scene, they are trained to know how to respond to people in trauma and how to begin all the process. And I know, right? We've had this conversation where my instincts first knew in this job was someone is there's a family that's experienced homicide. I want to call them. I want to go
Yep.
visit them. And I've had to learn with BPD, there's a way that they do this that actually is to prevent families from being re-traumatized over and over again, right? I show up, I sit with them in the living room for hours. They go through, pour their hearts out. It's incredibly painful. And then the detectives show up and then they have to do it all over again. And it
And
doesn't.
stories
So
get
now
crossed.
exactly. So
Yep.
what has to come first is trauma response and working through an investigation, and the additional of making sure the city's leadership is in touch. I've learned how to grow in this role about how I emotionally, might be pulled in, but still need to hold back so that things can be documented properly, and
Yep.
that we're supporting families in the long run, not in the kind of immediate form necessarily,
Yep.
if it's intention. And at the same time, we want our first responders, if they suspect something is happening with child abuse or neglect, to file that
Yep.
document, because it's supposed to be a confidential process. It's supposed to be, these agencies, the DCF agency gets so many reports of 51As. It's their job to then sift through and investigate which ones turn
And
into something
substantiate.
more and which ones they do a quick check and it's actually okay. But when it goes to the media in between, when people feel that they need to start talking about everything, and then the rumor mill gets going and one thing leads to another, and then it gets blown up and blown up and blown up. Again, these are people's real lives that the rest of us are often able to just disconnect when we move on to the next thing. And our first responders are in situations like this with families every day, multiple times a day, throughout the night. And it's our responsibility to make sure that they're supported through this, through the proper channels. Every agency plays their role. Everyone did the right thing here in terms of their response, although, again, there could have been better training on language and response.
Yep.
But it was the calls to others that then blew up. Then they got the media involved. Then more reinforcing of that, that I think is now going to have an impact on this family for a long time. And again, whether there was illegal behavior, whether there was anything that needs follow up, all the right people, all the right agencies are already involved. Let them do their work, because they do this work. They are the experts. They know what they're doing. Of course, we want accountability. Of course, we want, we don't want to make sure that there are checkpoints in place so that even the agencies that are administering the law are never above the law. But there's often a feeling out there of, we're going to jump to that everything's a cover up. We're going to jump to that this or that is happening. And it's a delicate balance, because we need to be transparent enough so
Yep.
that people can trust what's happening and know the process, but also discreet enough that we're protecting families' lives in these moments of crisis.
Mayor, I just thank you. I didn't want to discount what you were saying there, and I hear the sensitivity to the EMTs. I hear the sensitivity to what people are dealing with in life, and so thank you for that. In these type of situations where we talk about a heavy issue, I always want to offer guests the opportunity to end on a light note. And toward the end of this month, around 7,000 to 8,000, I don't know the exact number, Black and brown folks, Black folks are going to descend in your city. You made an announcement this week, NAACP, national, locals doing their things, but also you and Kareen, and y'all say John, but Matt and Shagun, y'all are, what's going on with the NAACP convention? You sort of inherited this opportunity. We got to give credence, and I actually texted him the other day. We got to give credence to Mayor Walsh, Tanisha Sullivan, Michael Curry, Lori Nelson, a lot of the other folks some years ago, but give me 2 minutes before Michael beats me up. Let's talk about the end of the month.
It's just one of the most important and beautiful and humbling honors that any city could have. I've learned even more about the organization and the convention in particular. And so you really have in the NAACP convention a multi-generational group of activists, eager community participants who are ready to come together, learn, share, get involved. And our city has a chance not only to be a backdrop and have people learn a little bit more about all the work that Boston is doing, but an active collaborator. And the goal that so many from the national board, Michael Curry and others, and the local branch, Tanisha Sullivan and Cheryl Kleiman Crawford, and everyone who's been involved there. From day one, and day one, they said this is the longest ever planned convention, 5 years in the making, because it was virtual and then now back. But from the beginning, the goal was to make sure that it would have lasting impact in Boston as well, that we would get to showcase, but also build infrastructure. And it's really exciting to see the connections that are being made here with local vendors, with local organizations, and to continue on what will hopefully be an annual and lasting impact from this.
Absolutely. Mayor, I know you have to get into an event. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll follow up about the post-convention impact in our August appearance if you're not on vacation. But thank you so much for coming in this morning. Get to the event and try to get some rest. 11:40 last night with the kids and then getting them up this morning. But thank you so much for coming in, and we'll check in next month.
All right. Good to see you as always.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye. Everyone, that was our mayor, as you know. I don't have the music and stuff set up here, so y'all just have to hear my voice. But I appreciate her transparency and candor in defining what the roles of BFD, BPD, and EMS. Shout out to Hooli. I've known him since the Menino days. ABC, ambulance before. Did he say cops or ambulance? I don't want to say cop. Well, ambulance before cops. And so we got that definition. We heard her as a parent. And if you pay attention, when the mayor's voice gets like that, she's in an emotional place. She also articulated what I've known for months, and it shifted a little bit with this administration. And she said it here. I am growing and learned in this role that emotionally, as a mother, as a human, you want to go out and visit every family. Some people have pushed back. The mayor hasn't called. The mayor hasn't done this. I've known since like 2000 and I want to say 8 or 9 that law enforcement doesn't want anybody touching a family or witnesses until they declare an all clear. What happens is the mayor comes, of course, people hear the mayor's coming, other family members, extended family, some want to come and fuss and cuss. Some just want to hear what she has to say. And people start talking about what happened. People that weren't there may hear something, and that disrupts the investigation. One of the major things we can do for a family is resolve who did it and what happened. And so there's a whole bunch of stuff that comes within this field. I've been in it for some years, and well, that's another conversation. But we appreciate the mayor being with us today. Tomorrow morning, we will check back in for a quick shot at 9 a.m. because as you all see, on the road. So thank you all for tuning in this morning. Just a couple of announcements. Julian, see you in the room. Julianne, see you as well. Dina, Ma, Heidi, everybody that's in the room. Didn't get a chance to do a lot of the shout outs. Pastor Marion, Leslie, Nicole, good morning. Dina, good morning. Good to see you in the room. Sister Debbie, Dow Drumright. I think Asia, Sharon Cornelius, got you as well. All right. Dina, yes, I am, ma'am. All right. Y'all have a wonderful day. Let me just, can I give y'all just, this is just, that's just the view from the hotel across the bay. I haven't hit the beach yet. I don't hit the beach until I'm hotel hopping. Let me tell y'all something. Gather your points and use your points from hotels wisely, because if you save them, you can work it out. Have a wonderful, Miss T, good morning. Good to see you in the room. Susan, I meant to tell you, I met I met one of your staff people the other day at the Meet the Media. Susan, I'm not going to reveal where I am. Most people know where I am. I'm in Miami. That's my second home. I'm in Miami. Hey, Denasia, good morning. Rochelle, good to see you in the room. Susan, I met Colleen. Tell Colleen I said hi. Great young lady. And so, yes. All right, I'm getting off of here, you all. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Be safe. Take care of yourselves. And we'll see you tomorrow for Thankful Thursdays. And we'll talk to you then. All right, everyone. Peace.